Welcome to Breaking Dogma. This podcast, it really sets to expose the false promises of conventional wisdom. And we want to look at highlighting transformative approaches that help us break from the herd. I'm your host, James Partsch. Today's episode, Small Firm, Big Impact, the Boutique Advantage. We're going to explore how boutique firms can outshine larger consultancies. Our guest today is Erica Tyler. She has navigated the worlds of Deloitte and Korn Ferry. She now leads her own boutique consultancy, Tyler Advisory Group. Erica helps businesses grow strategically with purpose and aligned leadership. Erica, welcome. Give us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And yes, my small boutique firm, Tyler Advisory Group, I like to refer to myself as the Chief Growth Advisor. And that's exactly what I do every day. I advise small businesses and other owners through growing and scaling their businesses.
I love it. Funny story with Erica, and this is actually a full circle moment to be able to have Erica as a guest on this podcast, because a little over 5 years ago, is Erica and I met. I actually came across a post of hers that she shared on LinkedIn, and it was about onboarding leaders. And she challenged what I had always learned. So Erica posted something about establishing a 30, 60, and 90-day plan for leaders that are interviewing to come into your company. But at the time, and still even today, the standard practice was really to ask candidates to give you their 30, 60, 90-day plan. And Erica's approach, to me, it was a little radically different. I didn't agree with it, but I didn't approach her with disagreeing. I actually reached out to her to learn what she was doing and why she felt that was the right way. I was really intrigued. I wasn't critical. So Erica didn't just explain her thinking, though. She shared her entire framework with me. She backed it up with a lot of insight. And what I took away from it was, how can somebody build a real plan for 30, 60, and 90 days from the outside of your organization? They don't know the intimate details. They don't know the politics. They only know what they can research publicly. And that changed my whole perspective. I thought, we've always done it this way. So I adopted that from Erica. And that was a breaking dogma for me well before this podcast was even concept. So Erica, full circle moment, just bringing back to us here today.
Yes, I know. I love it. And honestly, I've actually built a methodology. One of my coaching programs is built behind that 30, 60, 90-day leadership program that I shared with you. So
did you get any pushback? Like when you did that? Because so many companies want us to put together this 30, 60, 90-day plan. And okay, the first 30 days, I'm going to get to know my peers. And the next 60 days, I'm going to set some goals. And the next 90 days, I'm going to kick those goals off and test to see if they're right. But in reality, I'm in 5 days and it's all blown apart. It's blown to hell. And now I'm starting from scratch and I don't know what to do or where to go.
You know what, James? It's really to each his own, but I lead from an execution perspective. So I'm all about how are we going to make sure someone is coming in, hit the ground running, and is executing. And what I really realized when building the startup was you ask for a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and it's literally, this is what I'm going to do. And they're bringing ideas, they're bringing concepts from different companies. And especially when you're in a startup or the small business space, you have to realize that you're unique. You're very unique in your approach, and something that may have worked at a company as large as Salesforce, you can probably take that to an Adobe or somewhere else. But when it comes to small businesses, we have our own ways of operating. So it's really more of, I need them to execute. I know what they need to do. What I would love to do is see how they take their knowledge and put it on top of this plan that I have built for them. It was just a better indicator of success in the environment, where after the 90 days, you're like, oh my God, we just hired this person. And it did not go as expected. We thought they were going to know X, Y, Z. We thought they were going to be able to lead this initiative, and nothing was done. So taking that approach, it helped me, they look for metrics. Metrics. How do you know someone's doing well in the job? They're doing well by establishing what you need done up front, the first 30, the 60, and the 90 days, and then seeing if they're executing on that, and not necessarily like, come in, just do your 30, 60, 90-day plan. So it makes a difference. But like I said, the key to it was I'm all about execution. So if you hit this ground running, it has to be with some execution behind you.
I love it. And me, as somebody who was doing hiring at the time, I learned a ton from it because I reflected on, can I articulate what I expect from this candidate? And a lot of leaders will tell you they can articulate, and then you get in and they tell you you're not achieving something, but you don't know what's in their head and they can't articulate what's in their heads. How can you ever make it real? That's, I think, what blew me away with your approach is you as a leader knew exactly what you expected. You knew how it aligned to the strategy of the business, and you were able to tell if this person was or was not going to be able to help you achieve that, rather than after 90 days starting from scratch. So I took that away. It's something that I still apply today, and I will most likely apply that for the rest of my career. So I thank you for that. So Erica, just you've done so much, and we'll definitely get deeper into startup scene and the amazing things you've helped companies accomplish in that space. But can you walk us through your journey from Deloitte to Korn Ferry and ultimately starting your own boutique firm?
Yes. Oh, what a wonderful journey it was. So initially my background that I have is in accounting. You would not believe that. And I started in an accounting firm. I was in a CPA. I was sitting for my CPA license. I was in all of that hustle and bustle. And I had the opportunity to come to DC and be a consultant, a financial transformation consultant. And I started out there, and my first project was essentially me traveling to 22 cities in a summer to basically help and do a mock audit and help prepare the Marine Corps for a federal audit, essentially. So I came in really from hey, let's mock audit, let's do all this. And the role actually turned more into strategy. How do we need to be looking at how we prepare ourselves to even be ready when it comes to financial transformation? What does that look like for us? So again, leveraging that accounting experience, and that was the work that I was doing. And I will say, after a while, we have this saying, what it was is I did not want to be an auditor anymore. I felt like when you go into places, they look at you as, let's just put them in a corner. They're coming here to slap our hands, okay? And I have too much personality for that, James. So I was able to pivot more strategically. I had the opportunity to run a startup, kind of bring my skills. It was fun times. I quit Deloitte. They came to me 3 different times and gave me different offers. And I was, the first time I'm like, I just don't want to do federal work anymore. And they're like, okay, well, where do you want to go in the company? And I was just like, you know what? I have an opportunity, and I just feel like I had to seize it. And they said to me, okay, if it doesn't work, you're more than welcome to come back. So it was just the perfect thing at that time. And I went into leading a startup, which I was able to grow it from $300K to $10.3 million in 2 years. And that was just a feat in itself. However, when COVID came around, a lot of the projects that we did were very CapEx focused, and the world shifted to an OpEx. How do we get people to show up for work? How do we get everybody connected, as opposed to how do we rethink our digital strategy? So from there, after the role kind of went away, there was an opportunity for me. I did start my business. I did. I was like, this is the perfect time. And I had the opportunity I had an offer to work at Korn Ferry. And the first thing that came to mind was this was all the work that I used to do on the weekends. I used to call it my fun weekend work. I know that's geeky, but I used to do a lot of the org strategy. And it was also an area that I knew there was an opportunity for me to grow stronger in. I was so good when it came to operations and strategy, and really throwing the organizational element into it. I just felt that it was a win-win. I could still have my business on the side. I was coaching. I still had things going. But I went to Korn Ferry. And I realized that, okay, I just didn't want to be at a huge global firm anymore. And that's when I was just like, you know what? You need to live in your business, girl. And here I am living in it.
So before you went to Korn Ferry, any specific reason you didn't reach back out to Deloitte?
It was just the work. It was the type of work that, after running a startup, I just fell in love with a different view of work or a different flow of work. It was, from strategy to operations, putting a strategy in plan and making an implementation. And it was more of just the workflow that was there the only thing I thought about was the projects that I was on before. And I'm like, ugh. I didn't want to do those anymore. And that's why when Korn Ferry came up, they're like, org strategy. I'm like, oh, org strategy. I used to love that stuff on the weekends.
So is it just having some experience myself in big consulting, that workflow, wearing those multiple hats, being able to solve the big challenges, is that just part of what big consultancies are? Like you're pushed. I know you can wear many hats in a big consultancy, but not the same way you can in a startup. You're pushed into certain, whether it's verticals or areas of the org or responsibilities, and you might have to think multiple ways. Is that part of it?
You know what? I think that concept of the, multiple hats or wearing a bigger hat is, in consultant, you do wear a big hat. It's huge. And it comes with you also need to make $750,000 this year in new business, where in a small business, you're wearing a big hat, but it's like, oh, you have to take four or five people and make this pop up from it. So I think really what it was kind of just the dynamics. You go into in the big consulting, the dynamic is very engagement focused, like getting engagement done and selling and getting things, and you don't have that much time to really sit back and absorb the work that you're doing and absorb what impact you're making at some of these companies. And I guess after running a startup, that's where I was. I was so influential in building and making an impact that, going somewhere else and your impact is, did you sell? Are we close to our revenue numbers? It just became a boring game for me. That's really what it was.
I feel you. I had an epiphany myself recently, as you know, and I felt like we were sacrificing solving real challenges for our clients in the name of a revenue cycle. Like we have to solve client issues or we don't have revenue, but it almost felt like revenue became the priority and the client issues were just a means to the end, versus if we knew we were going to solve really good problems, the money would come with that. It just felt like it was backwards. So I totally get where you're coming from on that. So what elements from your time in big consulting firms did you choose to retain? I mean, Deloitte, Korn Ferry, these are organizations that a lot of people take a lot of pride in getting into, and you've had exposure to both. You've had exposure to the startup scene. Now you are able to really focus on your own firm. So what elements do you find yourself still embracing or maybe even modifying a little?
Yes. So first and foremost, I love Deloitte through and through for its training, for its professionalism, for its networking. I think those are some really good foundation elements that any business owner, whether you're in tech, whether you're in retail, I think they did a very good job at just setting up the basic of a foundation for your career overall. So that's one of the things that I love to live on now, making sure that foundation is built, making sure I'm doing ample networking, making sure we're showing up from a professional standpoint. But some of the things that I just love about bigger companies is you get to see the structures and process that it's chaotic to build in a smaller or startup firm. They're right there, right in front of you, like, Here's how we do pricing. Here's how we do contracting. Here's how we run an engagement when it comes to strategy. Here's phase 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the deliverable. So the blueprint is right there in front of you. And that's what I love about the bigger companies. You have that blueprint in front of you, where when you're in a smaller organization, sometimes that blueprint is not there. You have to figure out what that blueprint looks like to you. So I think that's why I love having the breadth of expertise that I have, because it's like, okay, I know what this blueprint looks like at this level. How do I bring that blueprint down here so that we're able to operate using it?
So it's fair to say you were able to develop a little bit of a playbook that you didn't read from one for one, but it gave you some direction on how to modify certain things and apply it to what was of value to whatever you were doing now.
Yes, from relationships, from pricing, from negotiating, how to deal with certain things that come up. There's a huge playbook that you're able to just take from it. But even though they have that playbook, what I love is just being able to tailor that to your own business. I think that's where the magic is. That's where the magic's at. You have all this great experience. You've been with these big companies, and here's how I've taken that playbook, and here's how I simplified it for my audience.
Do you think the relationship building is a big part of that as well? Like, do you still have relationships from people that you met at Deloitte and Korn Ferry?
Yes. They're built that way.
Is there anything specifically, like, that's a lot of really good stuff, but is there anything specifically which you deliberately reject in your own practice for any particular reason?
I'm not sure how to articulate this. I'm going to articulate this the best way possible. I do not like for people to feel like, I don't want you to feel like a project. There's a lot of times when I talk to clients and they need something done and they're like, oh, how do I get this? And a lot of times you'll have the conversation and you'll have the hems and haws around the budget. And there's sometimes when I'm like, I just don't want this to feel like a project. I just don't want us to feel like, for lack of terms, hitting and quitting it. We're not just boom and boom and boom and boom. I just don't want. I think that's a big part of the relationship. I want you to come back, not with the same problem, but for us to do more, better things, growth. That's my biggest thing. So that's the only thing about Big Four that it just felt like, okay, next project, and the next hour I was on another project, and the next hour I was on another project. Different time zones, different parts of the globe. It's great, but it's by the end of the day, I'm like, oh, one was on org strategy, one was on optimization, and one was on this, and it just like mushes together. And it's like, how am I able to really make an impact? I'm just really just showing up and doing.
That hits really hard for me, specifically just around, the moving to the next thing. I feel like it's very popular lately to pick on big consultancies, and they are a lot of their own problem, and they have this revenue or this what is the term I'm looking for? They have like this dependency cycle. I will do just enough to get you somewhere, but you have to depend on me to get you to the next place. Are they really fully solving things? You said it earlier with engagement. You're just so encouraged. What is that next thing? That are we losing sight of what we were originally brought in to solve because we put a team in place to solve that, as we're looking at what that next project could be in the big consultancy world, where I've personally found, similar to you, that more boutique-wide, I can solve the problem. And through that, we're often approached and we're told, we have this problem too. Can you help solve it? And even if it's not me, there's someone in my network, or I might have an idea, or we can sit down and have genuine conversations around it. And I'm not bringing 32 people to the table to give you some prepackaged way to solve whatever that thing is. We're having real, genuine, honest conversations about whether it's really a problem and what the right steps are to dive a little bit deeper into that. I did not have that as much of luxury when I had worked in larger consulting firms.
And you know what? I think the way that firms are built, like, they're helping. Their goal is to help, but it is definitely, this is what we solve. Here's our solution. And I think with the small boutique, it's not, here's my solution. It's like, here's what I have to offer you. Here's how we're going to work through it. So there's definitely a difference there that I see with that. They're very solution oriented. They've been around a long time. boom, we've done this solution with thousands of people. This is the solution that we can do for you as well. There's not really that much sometimes the flexibility of it because, they have their leverage models, their staffing models, hours, and, there's just a lot of things that go into the big consultant that sometimes waters down the relationship process.
Relationship, yes.
Yes. And on our side, it's relationships. Consulting is service-based. It's a relationships game. We have a lot more time to focus on the relationships. We have a lot more time to nurture those relationships as opposed to, once a engagement is sold by the senior principal or the senior director, it's okay, now you have an engagement manager, and then here's your team, and you guys meet, bi-weekly, weekly. So it's just, I think that's what I found to just be, okay, this isn't as intimate as I wanted it to be.
Well, that matters a lot because, something I always ask myself as I take a similar journey that you're taking is, what's the inherent value that the resources and scalability of large firms offer? Because there is value to that. But I try and figure out, how do I compensate for that in my setting? And that's why when you said relationships, that hit so much. I think that's perfect. That's the answer right there. I compensate for it with genuine relationships that I didn't have that luxury before. And I think I yearned for that a lot in my professional career. And it's why I find so much reward in taking this approach. So, a lot of conversations. You and I, we've been friends now for over 5 years. We've had a lot of conversations. We've gone deep in a lot of areas. There's something that has continuously come up in our conversations that I love, that you emphasize so much. And you always emphasize to me about growing with purpose. So how, for our audience, how would you define and measure purpose in your consulting engagements?
It's funny because I think purpose is something that people struggle with personally as well. And when you put it to the business, is what's that purpose? It's something that I see a lot of business owners struggle with. So I spend a lot of time on that vision. And sometimes it's simple, like, where do you want to be? Whether it's revenue, and I break that down revenue wise. I had a coaching client years ago, and I'm like, well, where do you want to be when it comes to revenue? And they're like looking at me and laughing a little bit, and they're like, $1 million? And I'm like, okay, just because I did 10.3 million doesn't mean that I'm going to look at your million and it's nothing. That this is what's important to you. This is this goal that's getting to you. So then from there, it's like we look at, what is it, revenue? Was it number of clients? What I like to do is I like to reverse engineer it, where I say, okay, well, how many clients get you $1 million? What's your average client, ticket? Say your average client ticket is $5,000 a month. So it's, okay, how many XYZ clients do we need coming in a month? How does that break down to the million, or break down to what you have over the years? And usually the million goal is like a 2 to 3 year range. So how do we break that down for the years, in that we want to be at 500,000 by year 2, 250 by the end of this year? And I break it down to, that means, hey, of our high value clients, we may need 12 clients for the year. That means we just need 1 client a month. And then your purpose starts to become a little bit more clear, where it's like, okay, I have the business, we want to provide these services, but we want to get to this number providing this service. We're starting to build the layer of purpose here. And then we look, okay, so how do we get there? What does that look like from a client perspective, where, okay, that's 12 clients a year. We need 1 client a month. So instead of you looking at, hey, I need to make $1 million this year. Hey, I need 12 clients. You're like, hey, I need 1 client a month. I need 1 high value client a month. That's going to get me to where I am. So it starts to build in, kind of layer that purpose, where it's like, okay, before, like, here's just what we deliver. And it's like, that's where people stop with their purpose. Here's what we deliver. Here's what we want to happen with that delivery. Here's the results we expect from that delivery. And here's how we're going to get to it. So it's basically layering that purpose, so it just doesn't feel like I just have this purpose just to have it.
How many times have you seen a light bulb go off in somebody's mind when they realize, I don't know where I'm going to find $1 million, or I don't know where I'm going to find 12 clients, but when they're like one client a month, cakewalk. I got this.
Actually, I think it's the best. I love the faces at the end where I'm like, okay, what does that mean in client? And then when they break it down, they're like, oh, and I'm like, yes, that's it. That's all.
Have you ever had, or have you ever encountered resistance when you try and do that? Have you ever had somebody who tried to push back and say it's not that? Like they just think that there's more to it than that, whether there really is or really isn't. Have you encountered any sort of resistance?
No, I really haven't. And James, I think a lot of that goes to the type of clients I make sure I work with. You have to have that growth mindset. You have to be open. You cannot come to me and say, no, but this is it. It's just not. That's just not how it works. I wish if the relationship worked that way, I just don't know.
So wait, you're telling me we don't have to say yes to every single client and opportunity?
You don't. You don't. And actually, I preach that. One of the things I love doing with clients is we take a look. I always take a look at your current client portfolio. Who's working and who isn't working for us? Why aren't they working? Have you reevaluated? Is this because this client is not a good fit today? And it sounds horrible, but it really isn't. It's like, this client, doesn't serve us anymore. It could be a whole bunch of different things. Okay, they're a low ticket item. They ask for all these things. Every time we deliver something, there's always a problem with it. And what that turns into, it looks like a quality on your end, and it really may not it's probably not a fit. And then over here, you have another client, everything runs smoothly. The same things that we're doing over here with this client runs super smoothly. And guess what? This one over here pays more. Or they pay on time. They're consistent. So a lot that I like to do is we always take a look at your current portfolio. Every year, we go through the year and it's like, okay, at the end of the year, when we recap where we're at from a strategy perspective, it's, who did we bring on this year? Who might we need to let go? I definitely think when you're considering growth, you can't take everybody along with you.
I love that. It reminds me of something a mentor and friend said to me about, and I'm not affiliated with this company whatsoever, but there's a company called Very Little Gravitas. I think the website's still out there, but you go to the website, it's really bright yellow with some bold text all over it, and that's not it, because that's just not my aesthetic. But the words, they were very unapologetic in what they did. And it made me realize I want to work with whatever clients are saying yes to this person, because they are probably some of the most fun clients, or most, they probably resonate and work so well together, because the words this individual is using on their site, they hurt because they're truths. They're things to be true, but you might not be telling yourself. And if somebody is willing to be that humble to listen to what this person's saying and still engage with them, I'm like, that's the kind of person I want to work with. So that is really, it's still something I go back to inspire me, to remind me there are good clients and bad clients, and that there are really good clients out there. So, and sometimes we might wind up in a bad situation. It's honest conversations that get us through that. We're not all going to be the best match for one another. That's okay. That's what leaves enough room for all of us.
And I think James, like I said, it just goes back to relationships. Not all relationships work sometimes. Sometimes it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe we just need to part ways with this relationship.
Yes. And it's weird because, in dating lives, there's a breaking point. But in lives that aren't dating, like friends and business relationships, sometimes there's not a breaking point. It can just drift off, or we hold on to it way too long until it gets ugly because we're afraid to have a breaking point, because that's just not the relationship. That's just not how it works. Like, you don't call somebody and say, hey, it's not you, it's me. We're going to go separate ways. And we should do more of that. So Erica, something else I wanted to touch on is you talk through helping, really break down what feels impossible and turn it into something that's so tangible and approachable, and people can start to see their successes. How do you help them really operationalize the strategy. And I guess what I mean by that is, how do you really help them bridge from the concept of what they have to do, you make it so tangible and easy, to actually execute on it? Is it more something that they naturally go and do, or do you have something that you help them with to execute?
So I like to think of myself as just like a guide along with it as well. A lot of things, what I love about what I do and what I'm big on is that you started the business. You know this business better than I know this business. What I have is the strategy. We're going to mash these things together to make some magic. So a lot of times is after we get to a point where it's like, hey, it might just be only 2 clients, or hey, you might just need to do this. It's then taking a look at what needs to get done. What are some of the things that are holding you back today? Where are you struggling? It's always great to start with pain points, just like when we sell. We sell from a pain point perspective. So when you're looking at, what do I need to do to get further? One, what's paining you today? What points are, and that could be, hey, our marketing is weak. We don't have, a team member. We don't have XYZ. And then we align that to what needs to go, what needs to happen. Whether it's we need to get rid of this client, but we actually need to bring on more clients in XYZ space. Is your marketing set up to actually help you target these clients better? Or is your marketing generic? Because you had all these clients in here, because you had a few clients that weren't your ideal clients. A lot of times I see businesses with a very generic marketing, where when you take the time to, let's reassess, hey, we need to maybe focus on this niche. We need 4 or 5 clients this year in this niche. Then it's like, let's look at how we target our marketing more. So again, here's where we get to the strategic initiatives. I like to kind of, differentiate the two. Operational is, here's what we're doing. Here's how I'm executing it. We're sending out 5 campaigns this month. Where me, I stay along the strategic initiatives. So, hey, we need to take on 5 new clients from XYZ. The first step is your marketing set up? How is your current sales process? And another great thing that I see a lot of times, if we're talking about clients, we're most likely going to get on the service perspective. Are your services actually set up to attract the right clients, or the current service you have is attracting the clients that you don't want for a reason? So it's kind of looking at balancing. When we're talking about growth and strategy, we always take a look at those 2 areas with it and balancing what needs to be done from that perspective. A lot of times if we're looking at clients is, okay, is our services there to support them the right way? And are we targeting them the right way? So it leads into more of that conversation around it. And I just feel like I'm that guide. I'm the person that says, okay, we need this many. Let me see what your pain points are and what do you feel that we have to do this year? And then that's when I'll sprinkle in kind of my industry knowledge. Well, hey, here's what's being done. Here's some other examples. So it's a mix of, it's like a big mixing pot of it. I like the way that works because it takes their ideas and my ideas and marries them so that what they have to do doesn't feel like what Erica told them to do.
So I think a lot of people need to hear this, both companies and consultants, because I often find companies say they want somebody strategic, and you come in and you go through the exercises you say, and they say, okay, well, what should I do? How do I do it? Give me my step by step. And they expect then the tactical to bring it to life, and it's outside of the scope. And if you have that conversation, it can ruin the relationship. So it's really setting those expectations. But on the flip side, and I struggled with this early in my career, both when I was on the industry side and consulting, is I wanted to be able to help. I got excited about the prospect of the future. So now I'm getting elbows deep in helping bring that solution to life, but we haven't yet talked about that as part of the scope of work. So what advice do you have, I guess, on both sides? So it's going to be a two-sided question. How do you navigate when a client starts to forget that you're more of a guide? And then what advice do you have for people who are in consulting to be able to set the expectation up front and revisit the conversation if we start bleeding away from the strategic into the tactical?
That's a good question. I feel like I built that into my services. I built that transparency with all of my clients where we're walking through, and I will definitely say from my strategic planning services, I provide the conversations we have go into a final guide. I have coaching notes on the side where here's what we decided for strategy. Here's a few steps that we decided were some that you could pursue. And I usually put some coaching notes on the side to help them think through that concept, that strategic initiative, like just to help guide them some more. Because that's my final deliverable. It's like, I'm handing this over to you. I have some notes on the side, and this is everything that we talked about, which includes everything that you want to do this year from the strategy. And it's also defined so that, if we do this, we should be getting XYZ result. So I built that into how I deliver so that there isn't okay, are you going to help me? Or I need this done next. Because one, I like to empower them to see that this is something they're going to have to carry it out anyway. I know there's been plenty of times as a consultant where even when you're on the implementation side, nothing gets done. Or you can't move forward because there's a lot that you might need from that client. So I try to really build that empowerment into my clients as we're working through it, as we're talking through, does this sound right? I like what, if they have a good idea, let's talk through this idea more. Like I said, marrying what they do day to day with my strategy, it just helps it resonate more with them when it comes to actually getting it done and executed and them understanding what needs to be executed. So that layer is really built in. When it comes to the implementation side of it, usually because it's built in that way, it's more of what does that look like for me? So I usually am having the conversations of what does that implementation, what does that advisory support look like? I definitely think it's when you're having a conversation about strategy, they're two different. I don't think people realize strategy and execution are two different things. Two different things. And the execution side comes after it. So I think just how everything is built, it's just a natural flow for me. So I don't have to have those awkward conversations, because I do remember them being awkward in consulting where we put together this wonderful plan and then we give them like, here's your high level roadmap, and then hand it over. And you know deep down inside that most likely that roadmap is probably not going to get picked up, all depending on the stakeholder. And it
sits on a shelf and collects dust, and then
I put all my effort into designing these slides.
Oh, the slides. That's a whole nother conversation. So I guess as we're on this, we're talking about some really harsh truths. And big consulting strategies often turn into portfolios that collect dust. They don't get delivered. They placate boards. They help get you to your next, earnings call or whatever it is. But outside of that, so we can talk about the bad, but what's one widespread consulting myth that you'd like to debunk? Something that people think is the norm, whether it's big consulting or it's boutique, but it's not. It's not true. I don't know if there's anything that stands out immediately to you in that.
I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say anything stands out immediately, but besides the hours, I think a lot of times people think that you're just plugging away, always on. And whether you're boutique or big consultant, it just all depends on where you are. But I think that's the biggest thing. I think people think that you're always on. And one thing I loved about Korn Ferry when going there is your schedule was your schedule. They were very respectful of your schedule, your time. So I'm not available at this time, or I'm doing XYZ. It was just more about getting your work done there. So I think that was the biggest thing debunked, is like, I think sometimes they think you work all these hours or you're just into consulting stuff all the time. And sometimes we do have personalities outside of that.
I wonder if that's part of our personality as consultants, always trying to come up with a solution, or when we hear something interesting and we're trying to dig into it, people think we're on and we're like, no, we're genuinely interested in it. This isn't business related. But then we've also all had peers that want everybody to know that they worked all weekend. And I hope that we're breaking from that culture, especially here in the US. It's not something to brag about. It's not something to celebrate if you're working all weekend. But I've had plenty of peers that have moved on and like, oh, I don't work all night or all weekend anymore. And I was like, I never did. I set boundaries and I set expectations. And yeah, there are times that I have to stay late or I have to get on during the weekend, or it's an international situation. But that's far and few between. That's not the normal. But people also always only remember that one time, that 1 week, not the other 51 weeks of the year that I didn't work on the weekend. So I like that. I think that's a good one, because that is just that's what we all believe. Okay, so so some might argue that boutique consultancies are too niche, that they lack breadth. I think you've already kind of debunked that a little with how you approach strategy. But how do you address situations where broader capability is needed? So they bring you in strategically, but it's an area that you don't have specialty in, or you don't have that playbook, or you don't have historical knowledge on that. How do you address something like that?
Yeah. I do not touch it at all.
Okay.
What I think is really important, and I think that's the biggest difference between boutique and consulting. You can go to Deloitte and they have a menu. Hey, you want us to do this strategy, and that's great. But I think one of the great things about boutique consulting, and even the way we're made up, is it's just like consultant, you have partners, and it's their expertise in the practices. So with a boutique firm, you have the owner, and it's their expertise across the practice area. One of the things I find super important is quality of work. People are going to come back to you if you do good work. So make sure it's in an area that you're good at, as opposed to, trying to be an octopus and, okay, I do a little bit of marketing over here. I don't find business owners that try to do that in a small capacity. I find them struggling to grow and scale when it's multiple. I do everything. I do this, and this, and there's not enough resources. Unless you build your model that way, then I think it's a tough model to really just try to push through.
I need to hear this personally, because although I don't try and take on things that aren't within my scope, it's often I know somebody, right? Let me bring Erica in. She does this really awesome. And there's the right place and right time for that. But I always am like, oh, I don't do that. But I definitely know somebody, and I will spend hours flipping rocks over to find the right person, and I'm not working on my own business. So I know I need to get better at that. But can you keep me honest on something, especially having experience at Deloitte? And I heard this recently from a gentleman who has worked at very large consultancies. He started his own businesses as well. But he said early in his career, he used to take business from companies that had Deloitte there. And what he used to say is, you have a lot of young people walking around here in some really nice clothes, and they're all learning on your dime because you think that they have this broad experience. They can do everything. And often they might have one principal who does know that, but then there's 5 or 6 juniors who are put on site that don't know, and you're paying for these juniors to learn on your dime. Is that accurate? Is that hyperbole? Is there somewhere in between?
This is an iffy one for me. And the only reason I say that is because that is what the consultant model is. You have with consulting, you're paying for expertise. You're paying for the fact that you know that what you're going to get is going to be what you need to get from them from an expertise level. And that's just how the model is built. I've been a consultant. I've been a senior consultant before, and I know we have chains that it goes up through. I know at the end of the day, the senior manager is probably going to do the heavy reviewing, and the principal or the partner is going to look over a few pieces of it to ensure that, hey, we're presenting our best to the client. So it's a hit or miss, but that's just how the model is. You pay that money knowing that, yeah, there's somebody that's going to be at the top. They may be $795. but you're going to get what you need. And they may only spend 1 hour, but you're going to get what you need. The data is going to be collected. Just now, when you look at the business models, it's if somebody's using AI or if we're using some of these simplistic workflows to siphon data to bring it to us as the business owner to then make a decision.
Do you think clients really know they're spending $800 an hour on that principal resource, or do they know that across all the resources, I'm average spending $120 an hour, and they don't realize that some of those junior resources are helping bring that? It gives you access to that expensive expertise.
Yeah, you know what? I think it just all depends on the contract and how they negotiate. I've seen it done different ways. As somebody who has done pricing, I know a lot of times we know the internal pricing, but it may be, hey, here's what we'll do for this and do for this project. And it goes by hours. I've definitely been on some hourly engagements. And I think that was more like different. It all depends on the industry that you're working in. But I think a lot of people know. I think that's things that people know, that consultants are expensive.
One thing, little off topic, but with the pricing, I've heard a lot about value-based pricing, and it's a really interesting concept. And I'd love just, a 30-second take on it. But the premise is that I believe I could save you 10% of your staff's time, which equals $4 million a year by implementing X, Y, and Z, instead of paying me hourly, which I think will take 11 months, 22 resources at 50% capacity, I would rather get 25% of the measured value that I add for you. Do you think that is a sustainable model for consulting, or is there a reason nobody's really tried to go that direction?
It's not that I don't think it's sustainable. I definitely think it's an innovative approach, but with that model, it's both sides. It's not just your effort. You're also banking on the client's effort as well. So with that, it either takes you having a process to vet or understand. And that's why the people that are successful in this, you see them, their niche, where, okay, in the consumer space, we could do this project with you and save X, Y, Z because they've done that project before multiple times. And they may have a range of where they would fall when it comes. So I think that business model is a strong business model. But if you have the data, if you have the past performance, if you know the trends, I think going into it and not having that, I think it would just be so much. You'll find yourself overperforming because there's no metrics. What you're chasing is this dollar number, and you don't know where it's really going to come from just yet. So if you don't have it backed up with like past performance and all that, it could just be a pipe dream.
So I love this because I have a recent client that we believe will see between $2.8 and $4.2 million in potential savings. And the problem with that is this has to do with several hundred employees' hourly wage, and they're not going to reduce headcount. They're going to reallocate the exact same employee's time to something more impactful for the business. So although it equals that much money and they might not hire, I would never be able to tangibly say I saved them that much because I can't show what headcount they took off because they're not hiring for it today. And if they don't get rid of FTE, I will never be able to achieve that actual money. So I keep exploring this concept and I love the idea, but it also depends on the client themselves. How are they measuring? This client doesn't have the baselines to know what they're spending today. I know that it's very real savings, but they get to make the decision of how those savings are realized, not me. And that could drastically impact my output. So I always love exploring these innovative ideas. I'm sure there's situations it works better than others. Eric, I want to switch gears real quick as we get closer to the end here, because you've done so much more than what we've talked about. You've also advised along CEOs through peer advisory groups like Vistage. And I want to talk about this. So I want to talk a little bit about the peer-based dynamic and how it views your shape or how it's shaped your view of leadership. But before we get into that, I really want you to challenge a perception of Vistage, at least from a region that I'm in. And that perception is that some of these peer groups are a shadow of what they used to be. They're children of well-off individuals. It's a sort of a Nepo club. But then I've heard the flip, and I've heard it's really just influenced by how lucky you are and what cohort you're in. So you've seen this firsthand. How do you feel about these groups? Not picking on Vistage directly. There's many of groups out there, but what's your take?
So I had an amazing experience with Vistage, and I may have been one of those people that have been lucky to fall into a good cohort. I had a mix of people. I had people who had family members, their mother, their father were entrepreneurs, and then we had people who, like, there was brothers and sisters that were in different groups. They started the business together. So I got a really good mix of people. I had some people that were in corporate as well. So we had some people that were CFOs of organizations or finance directors of organizations that were in, and I was in the key group. So I don't know how to explain it. I had nothing but a great experience. I thought the time there was really amazing, just being around the different groups of people as well. One thing that it brought to me was, I think when your first time building a startup and you're really like, okay, I'm like the leader. You're so nervous about everything. And what it highlighted is, like, we're all zookeepers. We are all in here. You know, the monkeys may be out tomorrow on a Tuesday. And look, his monkeys are out on a Wednesday. You know, that's what I loved. It just grounded you in reality that everybody is going through the same thing. I think when you're a business owner, especially, you think you're crazy because you have to have a vision and you have to see how that vision is going to be, you know, brought to fruition within 2 to 3 years. And sometimes it's just crazy. You have an employee doesn't work out and you feel like your life is ending. And then when you go to these peer groups, it's like, oh, they have an employee that's doing the same thing. Oh my goodness, this employee is doing worse than what my employee does. And it just level sets you and, like, okay, I'm just going to wake up every day and keep doing what I do.
I love it. Have you had an engagement where client resisted, there was a resistance to the strategic recommendations that you gave? How did you either overcome or what lessons emerged from that? And I had said, I don't know, because you've already walked us through how you select your clients to try and avoid these situations, but I don't know if you've still encountered it.
I have not run into that just yet. And I say that because business is always going, new things come up every day, but I just haven't had that happen just yet.
Well, hopefully I'm not your first example, because I know I still owe you some things. All right. So Erica, before we move into the next area where I want to go through a little bit of a lightning round with some quick questions, any other insights or advice or experiences that you would like to share with people that we might not have touched on?
The biggest thing is especially with, like, boutique consulting, I definitely think just with the economy, with how everything is going nowadays, we saw how COVID boomed a lot of solopreneurs and a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming in, especially as you see a lot of these companies, big companies. And a lot of us in boutique consulting are these smart, strategic people that have been in Deloitte, Korn Ferry, EPAM, all these big companies, and have a lot to bring to the table. But what I want to give advice to is, like, really making it your own. When you first start, especially coming from consultant, I started my business from a traditional consulting way. And sometimes you have to realize that works for them, because their clients are like thousands and hundreds and thousands of dollars. And one thing I had to do was really make my consulting experience and what I wanted to do really my own. So my biggest advice is really creating and honing in on that, making this experience your own, especially if anybody's starting a boutique consulting firm. If they have one, please make it your own. I don't want you selling me a cybersecurity package that Deloitte has laid out in it, because sometimes it's just overkill.
And I mean, Erica, you've helped me realize, I always said that I'm much more strategic in what I offer, but I've started to realize I play very much between strategy and execution because I really love those big, bold ideas that come from strategy. But I find so much inspiration in helping leaders take those big, bold ideas and turn them into something tangible. So I'm like that first step of execution. I don't love to keep the lights on, be in the weeds, but I love that. How do I go from this crazy concept that everybody thinks I'm insane is never going to happen to, oh, this can be done and I see a path forward. I see how we can get there. Like, that's what I love to do. So you've helped me realize that I bridge that little bit of a gap between strategy and execution. When you get more into like the mid-market size company, that's where I tend to find myself playing when I reflect on what I've done. So you've helped me hone in a little bit, and I know I still have to work on crafting that, and we're working through that. This was not an attempt at trying to pitch you that I've finished. I got some work to do, but you've helped me get there. So I want to thank you for that as well. So if you're ready, I'd love to just go into a couple of just rapid fire prompts, answer them just off the top of your head. There is no right, there's no wrong answer here. This is really you sharing your knowledge and advice with the rest of us. So first one, complete the sentence. The best consultant always blank.
Relationship oriented. I feel like we should have some music from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
We'll dub it over. We'll dub something fun in there for you. That's the first thing that came to my mind because you index so heavily on relationships. Like as I was asking it, I wanted to answer that for you. So we were total same wavelength. What's the clearest sign a consulting engagement is off track?
Miscommunication or misunderstanding. The moment a client says something and you're like, once you make that face, it's like, okay, let's reset and make sure we are on the same page.
One practice from big consulting you refuse to adopt is?
Oh, I love this one. Booking my time. Oh, do you remember that?
Erica, if I could get paid for the amount of time I spent booking my time, I wouldn't have to work. The future of boutique consulting is?
AI enhanced.
Ooh. When you say enhanced, can you expand on that just a bit?
What I love to do is I put my templates, I've put a lot of my internal workings, my onboardings, I've built them into my AI dashboard. So, and it helps me run this business as who I am today and being able to leverage the partnerships when I need them. But really leveraging AI in your business, not only from hey, I'm writing an email today, but also how am I putting this into my systems? How is it helping me generate deliverables? So yes, the future of boutique consulting is AI generated.
What I love the most about that, though, is you said AI enhanced, and so many people are afraid AI is coming for their job. The real power in AI is humans remain in the loop. Whether that's at the end or in the middle, it enhances our ability. There's so much that's unlocked, but we are not near at the point where you can replicate Erica or James authentically.
Right. I think what it is a prompt starts with a human.
Yes.
So you have to prompt, and a prompt starts with the process of thinking and working through something starts with somebody, not AI. But somebody actually bringing something to it. So that's one thing I always preach. People are so valuable when it comes to AI. They're still, whether they're going to be architects, I don't think that they're going to just we're just going to be all AI based. You need somebody with some reasoning.
I might borrow that quote from you, by the way, just saying. So, okay, all of that, I love it all. So Erica, just for closing out here, two last things, and thank you for going through that round. So what we want is we want you to leave something for future guests and for our audience. And what I'd like to ask is for you to share one rule that you live by that shaped how you show up in the world. It could be business, it could be personal, whatever it is. We will share this with our next guests and our audience, and we'll explore how they would integrate it into their own life.
So I love to live by a motto, and it's really practicing what you preach. So just like, and I'm building my business alongside other business owners as well. I'm still building, I'm still growing, just like any other businesses. You're still growing, you're still trying to generate revenue, but a big thing to me is really practicing what you preach. So the things that I walk through and strategize with my clients, I also make sure, hey, am I thinking about those things that way? Am I showing up? And it just helps me just make that process much better. As I'm refining it, thinking through, how this might have shown up or how this may have made me think. It helps me reiterate and just strategize how I help clients also think through some of those things. And even personally, I can't preach about fitness if I don't go to the gym. So that's one thing that I would love to leave, the practice what you preach, and that's my motto.
I love that. And I love your example about I can't preach about fitness if I don't go to the gym. I feel like I've adopted something similar in my life, and excuse my language, but I always say I'm not allowed to bitch about something I'm not willing to change. So if I'm out of shape or I'm overweight, I don't get to complain to you about that unless I'm going and busting my ass working out. And then I can complain about getting there because I got there. I did it to myself, but I am only allowed to complain about it because I'm doing something actively to change it. So I absolutely love that. I cannot wait to hear what our next guest, how they would apply that to their life. So Erica, you've done all the heavy lifting. You've shared so much with us about breaking dogmas. Here we're lifelong learners. I'm a lifelong learner. So we want to do something I like to call flip it. And this is what we're going to leave you with here, or ask you to leave us with. If somebody hasn't engaged with you yet, I always like to assign people homework before I give them free advice. So what homework would you assign somebody that wants to engage with you so you know whether or not they're the right person to engage with? And then I'll take that away as my challenge.
That homework is basically a self-assessment. And that self-assessment is more of like, one, are you ready to grow? And that really comes personally. I see a lot of people say yes. And then when it comes time, you can't peel them from the day-to-day work that they love to live in. So that's a good one. That is a good one.
That one stings a little, Erica.
Oh my goodness. But you know what? This is the beauty of us together. So that's the challenge. How are you peeling yourself away from being stuck in your day-to-day and really focusing on that strategy? I think that's a great one that I see a lot. Is I try to get people to, the more hours I can get you working in strategy, the better. Sometimes I even send a report at the end of the year. And this is how many times we met this year. You spent 20 hours this year in strategy. So James, I want to see your strategy report.
I love it. I will do that. I will follow through on my commitment. So Erica, today we've explored how boutique consultancies not only compete, but can also outperform some of the big firms through the agility, the customization, the relationships. How can our listeners or anybody who might hear this, how can they connect with you and learn more about your approach and what you have to offer?
Yeah, so obviously LinkedIn is always the best platform to connect. I also have on my website, I have a actual link for Connect and Coffee, where it's just networking, getting to know each other and to have a conversation. Sometimes the best things start with just a simple conversation, getting to know someone, getting to understand what they do. So I do actually have a link that's just dedicated to, there's the relationship oriented.
And what's that website again? We'll share that out too when we post this, but what's that website for anybody who might be listening?
It's www.tyleradvisory.group, and it's .group.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes we get mixed up with it, but we're different over here.
The fact that you were still able to find something with Tyler Advisory, I'm sure those are common words. So kudos to you. So, Erica, I really want to thank you for anybody who's listening, and Erica yourself as well. I ask you join us in the future. We're going to dive into some other dogmas. A couple of those include enterprise tech, where we really dive into what influences consultants to push so hard around certain solutions and how they're incentivized by the brands. We'll also explore today's corporate innovation, including AI, and how it often turns into very expensive theater rather than measurable results. So, Erica, are there any dogmas that you can think of that you'd like to see us tackle in the future?
When it comes to consulting?
Period. Anything.
I would love to see something based off of the question that you gave me on the pushback. We got that 3 times, and I felt like we couldn't get to it because I'm like, I set it up transparency-wise, but I would love to see how that unfolds on another part of your podcast.
Awesome. We will look into that. We'll let you know when that's coming. Maybe we'll get to have you back for that too. So, something that I want to, leave a closing thought, something that really inspired this episode. It stems from a George Bernard Shaw quote, and this is going to be paraphrased, but the quote itself, the reasonable person adapts themselves to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to themselves. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable person. So this quote reminded me that nobody ever changed the world by simply implementing best practices, because best practices, they're bold bets that somebody made yesterday and it worked. And that's what best practices are. And they've been done a lot. So what I would ask everybody to do is ask yourself, what bold bets are you willing to make? And if you're looking for help with those bold bets, then visit us at breakingdogma.com. We're more than happy to open up the conversation. But thank you everyone for listening. And remember, keep challenging that conventional wisdom.